The Hunter's Mistake. The Vaxian Empire stretched across 17 star systems, a monument to evolutionary superiority. For 8 millennia, they had expanded outward from their homeworld, encountering and subjugating every sentient species in their path. It wasn't cruelty that drove them. It was instinct, coded into their very DNA. Grand Admiral Zexkor stood on the command deck of the Eternal Fang, 6 golden eyes reflecting the holographic display of a blue-green world. His scaled skin shimmered under the ambient lighting, armored plates shifting as he breathed in the carefully filtered air. The atmosphere aboard the flagship was adjusted to match the methane-rich environment of the Vaxian homeworld. Preliminary scans complete, Grand Admiral announced Sub-Commander Tazvor, her clawed digits manipulating the control interface. The third planet shows signs of industrial civilization, atmospheric pollution, and primitive spacefaring capability. Nothing beyond their local moon and occasional unmanned probes to neighboring planets. Zexkor's secondary breathing membranes fluttered, the Vaxian equivalent of a dismissive snort. Another prey species stumbling into the cosmos. What do we know of their biology? Carbon-based, oxygen breathers, endothermic, classified as humans in their dominant languages. They appear to be omnivores with minimal natural defenses. No scales, no armor, no significant claws or natural weapons. Physically weaker than even the Malforians we subjugated in the city system. Soft prey, Zexkor rumbled, a predatory purr vibrating through his throat sacs. Yet they've developed technology. Interesting. Perhaps they will serve well in the knowledge sectors after submission. The bridge crew exchanged looks of anticipation. A new conquest meant new resources, new territory, and new servants for the glory of the Empire. The pattern was always the same. Send in a scout force, demonstrate overwhelming superiority, accept their inevitable surrender, and integrate them into the Imperial hierarchy. Prepare a standard reconnaissance team, ordered Zexkor. I want first-hand assessment of their defensive capabilities and social structures. Commander Vexler will lead the expedition. Vexler, standing at attention nearby, bowed his armored head. A veteran of 7 planetary subjugations, he understood the routine. We shall depart immediately, Grand Admiral. Standard infiltration protocols. Yes. Their primitive detection systems should pose no challenge to our cloaking technology. Observe for 72 hours, then make contact according to Subjugation Protocol Alpha. As the reconnaissance vessel detached from the Eternal Fang, Zexkor allowed himself to imagine the commendations that would come with adding an 18th species to the Empire. The High Council would be pleased. Perhaps he would finally earn elevation to the inner circle. The humans would submit, as all prey eventually did. NASA's Deep Space Monitoring Station in New Mexico picked up the anomaly at 3:47 hours. Dr. Eleanor Chen was halfway through her night shift, coffee cooling beside her keyboard when the alert pinged. That's not right, she murmured, fingers flying across her keyboard. The signal showed a gravitational distortion in high Earth orbit, but nothing visible on any wavelength. She cross-referenced with other observatories and found similar readings from facilities in Chile, Hawaii, and Australia. Protocol dictated she escalate anything unusual. Within 30 minutes, the information had reached General Marcus Harding at Noortación. By dawn, the president had been briefed. By noon, a classified global alert had been transmitted to all major military powers. Not panic, not yet, but heightened awareness. Something was watching Earth, and decades of science fiction had prepared humanity for the possibility that we weren't alone. What no one expected was how quickly theory would become reality. Commander Vexler's team consisted of 12 elite warriors, each bred and trained for conquest. Their ship, the Silent Hunter, deployed observation drones across the planet, gathering terabytes of data on human civilization. They monitored communications, studied military installations, and mapped population centers. Primitive weaponry, noted tactical officer Nexpan, reviewing footage of military exercises. projectile-based with limited explosive capability, some directed energy weapons in development, but nothing that could penetrate our armor. Their aircraft are subsonic in most cases, added another warrior. Space capability limited to near-orbit operations and unmanned probes. Vexillor processed the information with growing confidence. They are fractured politically, multiple nation-states in constant competition. No unified planetary defense. The observations continued for the planned 72 hours. The Vaxians watched humans go about their lives, unaware of the predators circling above. They saw schools and hospitals, factories and farms, the mundane patterns of a species that had never faced a true interstellar threat. On the third day, Vexillor gave the order to implement Subjugation Protocol Alpha, the silent hunter decloaked above the United Nations headquarters in New York City, a deliberate symbol to demonstrate control over the planet's attempt at unified governance. The massive ship, nearly a kilometer in length, appeared suddenly in the clear blue sky. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent metallic sheen, hovering impossibly silent despite its enormous mass. Traffic stopped. Pedestrians froze in place. Cell phones pointed upward as millions of social media posts flooded networks worldwide. Vexillor activated the Universal Translator and broadcast on all frequencies. People of Earth, I am Commander Vexillor of the Vaxian Empire. Your planet has been selected for incorporation into our dominion. Resistance is both futile and unnecessary. The Vaxian Empire offers protection and purpose to all who serve. Your technological and cultural achievements will be preserved. Submit, and your lives will continue with minimal disruption. Resist, and you will be subdued by force. The message repeated in the 12 most spoken human languages. Then Vexillor waited, confident in the pattern that had repeated 17 times before. Initial shock. Fear, perhaps token resistance. Then the inevitable surrender negotiations. What happened instead would become legend. In a hardened bunker beneath the Pentagon, General Harding watched the alien ship with a grim expression. The president's voice came through on the secure line. What are our options, General? Limited, Madam President. We have no intel on their capabilities other than the obvious technological superiority required for interstellar travel. Recommendations. Harding took a deep breath. We've had contingency plans for first contact scenarios since the Cold War. Most assume we'd be significantly outmatched. I recommend Protocol Chimera. There was a long pause. That's not negotiation, General. No, ma'am. It's survival. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we can meaningfully negotiate. Another pause. Proceed with Chimera. Limited engagement only. I want to know what we're up against. Vexillor was growing impatient. 2 hours had passed since the initial broadcast. His sensors showed military forces mobilizing worldwide, but no official response. They deny the inevitable, he growled. Prepare a demonstration of force. Target their military installation in the desert region of their largest nation-state. Minimum yield plasma burst. Commander, interrupted the sensor officer, we're detecting multiple approaching aircraft. Primitive jet propulsion. Weapons systems active. As expected, they test our resolve. Deploy countermeasures but hold weapons. Let them see the futility of. The ship shuddered violently. Report, barked Vexillor. Unknown projectile impact on lower hull. Minimal damage, but our sensors didn't detect it approaching. It appears to have no electronic signature or propulsion system. Impossible, Vexillor snarled. All species develop detection technology before weapon technology. It's the natural progression. Another impact rocked the ship. Hull breach in Section 4. Atmosphere venting. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire on the aircraft. The silent hunter banked sharply, energy weapons lancing out to vaporize the approaching jets. But for every aircraft destroyed, more appeared. And something else was happening. Missiles that should have been easily intercepted by automated defense systems were getting through. They're using primitive ballistic technology with no guidance systems, realized tactical officer Nexban. Our countermeasures are designed for guided weapons. A third impact tore through the ship's propulsion system. Warning alarms blared as the silent hunter began losing altitude. Impossible, Vexler repeated, mandibles clicking in agitation. They cannot defeat us with such primitive technology. They are prey. But the humans weren't fighting like prey. They were fighting like predators who had studied their enemy and identified weaknesses. Even as the Vaxian ship crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, the truth became clear to Vexler. They had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. The wreckage of the alien vessel was secured by a joint international military force. Of the 12 Vaxians aboard, only 3 survived, including Commander Vexler. They were transported to a specially constructed containment facility, where they would eventually become the first diplomatic link between species. Aboard the Eternal Fang, Grand Admiral Zexkor received the emergency transmission from the dying Silent Hunter. The data was incomplete, the message fragmented, but enough came through to shatter 8,000 years of Vaxian certainty. The prey had teeth, and now they knew they weren't alone in the universe. "Prepare the fleet," Zexkor ordered, his voice unusually quiet. "This will not be a standard subjugation. Evolution's surprise." 3 months after the Silent Hunter crashed into the Atlantic, Earth had transformed. Ancient rivalries between nations faded as humanity faced its first confirmed extraterrestrial threat. Defense budgets quadrupled. Scientists worked around the clock, studying the recovered alien technology and the 3 Vaxian prisoners. What they learned was both terrifying and encouraging. The Vaxians were indeed biologically superior in many ways, stronger, faster, naturally armored. Their technology, while advanced, wasn't incomprehensibly so. Humans could understand it, and in some cases, improve upon it. But the most important discovery came from Dr. Eleanor Chen, now heading the Xenobiology Division of the newly formed Earth Defense Initiative. They're instinct-driven, she explained to the assembled world leaders on a secure video conference. More so than any intelligent species on Earth, their evolutionary path optimized them as apex predators. But it came with constraints. They think in patterns. They expect other species to behave according to predictable prey responses. President Isabelle Moreau of the European Federation leaned forward. "And we didn't follow the pattern." "Exactly," Chen nodded. "We've interviewed the prisoners extensively. Their society has encountered 17 other sentient species, all of which followed the same general response to overwhelming force. Initial resistance, recognition of futility, then submission. They literally cannot comprehend why we don't do the same." General Harding, now Supreme Commander of Earth's Unified Defense Forces, spoke next. "We've used this psychological insight to develop our strategy. The Vaxian fleet is approaching. Our deep space monitoring shows approximately 300 vessels. They'll reach Earth in 17 days. Can we win?" asked Prime Minister Takahashi of the Pacific Alliance. "Not conventionally," Harding admitted. "Even with the adaptations we've made to our weapons systems, they outgun us by orders of magnitude. But we don't need to win through superior firepower." Dr. Chen picked up the thread. "The Vaxians are inflexible. They've never needed to adapt their conquest strategy because it's always worked. Our plan exploits this rigidity." The strategy they outlined was audacious. Some called it insane. But as the Vaxian fleet approached, humanity prepared for the greatest gamble in its history. Grand Admiral Zexkor studied the holographic display of the Sol system. The fleet had dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, maintaining formation as they approached the third planet. "Status of the human defenses?" he inquired. "Minimal orbital presence," reported his new sub-commander. "Primitive weapon satellites, a small space station, several hundred atmospheric aircraft. Ground-based missile systems, nothing that poses a significant threat to our fleet." Zexkor's primary heart quickened with anticipation, but his secondary heart, the one that regulated higher cognitive functions, pulsed with caution. They defeated Commander Vexler with primitive technology. We will not underestimate them again. The fleet progressed methodically toward Earth, sensors scanning for threats, weapons primed. The first line of human defense appeared at the orbit of Mars, a scattered field of small satellites. Scanning the devices, reported the sensor officer. They appear to be mining equipment, repurposed orbital refineries, weapons capabilities. None detected, Grand Admiral. The officer never finished his sentence. Across the Vaxian fleet, sensors suddenly went dark. Communication systems failed. Navigation controls locked up. Report, bellowed Zexcor, but even the internal systems of the Eternal Fang were compromised. Holographic displays flickered and died. Emergency lighting activated as main power fluctuated. What the Vaxians couldn't comprehend was that the humans had reverse-engineered their computer systems from the crashed scout ship. The mining equipment had broadcast a precisely calibrated virus, exploiting a fundamental vulnerability in Vaxian operating systems that had never been patched because no species had ever before had the opportunity to examine their technology. As the Vaxian fleet drifted in disarray, the second phase of Earth's defense activated. From concealed positions on Mars and its moons, human crewed vessels launched. They weren't warships in the conventional sense. They were adapted from civilian spacecraft, mining vessels, and cargo haulers. But each carried weapons specifically designed to target Vaxian vulnerabilities. Systems rebooting, announced the sub-commander as emergency protocols finally kicked in. Minimal functionality restored. We're detecting approaching vessels. Through damaged sensors, Zexcor watched the ragtag human fleet advance. His mandibles clicked in derision. They attack with mining ships and cargo vessels. This is desperation, not strategy. But as the human ships opened fire, his confidence wavered. Their weapons weren't the expected nuclear missiles or laser batteries. Instead, they deployed clouds of microscopic particles, specifically engineered to penetrate the molecular structure of Vaxian hull materials. Where the particles touched, metal began to dissolve. Impossible, whispered Zexcor, watching sections of his fleet literally disintegrate. They couldn't have developed this countermeasure so quickly. But they had. Human scientists, working with knowledge gained from the captured Vaxians and their technology, had identified the unique molecular bonding of Vaxian construction materials. Then they'd developed a targeted nanoagent that could disrupt those bonds. The battle in Mars orbit lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 37 Vaxian ships had been destroyed, and dozens more severely damaged. The remainder retreated to regroup, their formations shattered, their confidence broken. But this was only the beginning of humanity's defense. As the remaining Vaxian fleet approached Earth, they encountered not panic, but a meticulously orchestrated resistance. Orbital defenses deployed electromagnetic pulses calibrated to the specific frequencies of Vaxian systems. Ground-based weapons targeted propulsion and weapons systems with unnerving accuracy. Zexcor, watching his invincible armada falter, made a desperate decision. Deploy ground forces. We will secure control centers and force their surrender. Vaxian dropships penetrated the atmosphere, landing in strategic locations across the planet. Warriors emerged, confident that in direct combat, their biological superiority would prevail. What they found instead was that humans had prepared the battleground. In Washington, D.C., Vaxian troops encountered streets flooded with a chemical compound that reacted with their armor, making it brittle. In Beijing, they faced sonic weapons tuned to frequencies that disrupted their sensitive hearing organs. In Moscow, the very air was seeded with compounds that clouded their enhanced vision. Every Vaxian biological advantage had been studied, understood, and countered. The prey had not only refused to submit, they had turned the predator's strengths into weaknesses. In the command center beneath Geneva, Dr. Chen monitored the global situation. Phase 3 is ready, she informed General Harding. He nodded grimly. Proceed. Across Earth's communications networks, a message began broadcasting, not from human authorities, but from the 3 Vaxian prisoners. They spoke directly to their people, explaining what they had learned during their captivity. "The humans are not prey," declared Commander Vexler, his once proud posture now humble. "They are something we have never encountered before. They are predators who evolved from prey. They understand both instincts. This gives them flexibility we cannot match." The broadcast continued, explaining how humanity's evolutionary path, from vulnerable tree-dwelling primates to apex predators of their own planet, had created a species that combined predatory intelligence with prey adaptability. "They do not think as we do," Vexler continued. "When threatened, they do not submit. They innovate. They cooperate despite their differences. They turn weakness into strength. The Empire cannot defeat them through conventional conquest." Aboard the damaged Eternal Fang, Grand Admiral Zexkor watched the broadcast with growing comprehension. The pieces aligned in his mind. The unexpected resistance, the targeted countermeasures, the cooperative defense that transcended the political divisions his reconnaissance had identified. Humans weren't just another species to subjugate. They were something new in the galaxy, something dangerous, something interesting. "All forces, cease attack," he ordered finally. "Prepare a communication to the human authorities." His officers stared in shock. Never in their history had the Vaxian Empire halted a conquest. "Grand Admiral," protested his sub-commander, "the High Council will never approve." "The High Council did not witness what we have witnessed," Zexkor interrupted. "These humans, they are not prey. Nor are they predators as we understand predators. They are something evolution has not previously created." He turned to face his bridge crew, his 6 golden eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. "They have defeated us not through superior strength, but through superior adaptability. They have studied us and found our weaknesses in months, while we failed to understand them despite millennia of conquest experience." After a long moment, he added, "I believe the Empire must reassess its approach." 6 months later, Dr. Eleanor Chen and General Harding stood in the newly constructed Interspecies Diplomatic Center in Geneva. Across from them sat Grand Admiral Zexkor and 3 members of the Vaxian High Council, who had journeyed to Earth for direct negotiations. "Your species presents a unique opportunity," stated High Counselor Mexter, the most senior Vaxian present. "For 8,000 years, the Empire has expanded through conquest. We have never encountered a species that could not be subjugated." "Until now," Chen said simply. "Until now," agreed the High Counselor. "This suggests our evolutionary path, while successful, has limitations. Your species demonstrates capabilities we lack." General Harding leaned forward. "And what do you propose?" "Alliance, not subjugation," replied Zexkor. "Humans have proven they cannot be conquered. But perhaps we can learn from each other. Your adaptability, our strength. Together, we could achieve more than either species alone." The proposal was unprecedented in Vaxian history. It would take years of negotiation, trust-building, and cultural exchange before a true alliance could form. But on that day, in that room, something fundamental changed in the galaxy. The predators had met their match, not in another apex species, but in creatures who understood both the hunter and the hunted. Humans, with their contradictory nature, cooperative yet competitive, peaceful yet warlike, vulnerable yet resilient, had introduced a new paradigm. As Dr. Chen observed later in her journal, "Perhaps this is humanity's true evolutionary advantage. Not our technology or our biology, but our unique perspective. We know what it means to be prey, yet we've become predators. We understand fear, yet we've learned to overcome it. This duality gives us insights no naturally evolved apex predator could possess." The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity, now taking its first true steps into a much larger, more complex universe than anyone had imagined. For the Vaxians, it was the end of unquestioned dominance. For humans, it was just the beginning of their cosmic journey. When the predators became the prey, Everyone learned something new about evolution.